2017 was one of the biggest years in gaming, or well, at least for Nintendo fans, because we got games like Super Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and to be honest, a ton more. But honestly, overall, it was just a good year for gaming as a whole. But something stood out amongst all that. Something in 2017 that released stood out to everybody, and that was Cuphead. Cuphead stood out for multiple reasons, but mainly because of its art style. Now, video games can be very pretty. They can get crazy with the graphics and the art direction, and most of those stand out in their own way. But in my opinion, nothing stands out more than Cuphead does. And why is that? Well, I'm reviewing Cuphead in 2022, so by now I'm sure you know what the answer to that question is. But I'm gonna answer it either way. The art style for Cuphead is reminiscent of classic cartoons, or the golden age of cartoons if you prefer. The game itself looks straight out of the 1930s to 1960s animations, and in my opinion, it's one of the best looking games, if not the best looking game I've ever played. The developers went all out making this the best it can be, and I want to make sure not to understate how amazing this is. This game took years to develop. The game was announced in 2014, but it was delayed multiple times until 2017 for a multitude of reasons. But as a great developer once said, a delayed game is eventually a great game. A bad game is a bad game forever. That's a quote I like from the amazing Mr. Miyamoto. So, Cuphead was delayed until the brothers that created the game felt it was just right. They thought of a ton of ideas until they finally landed on the idea and said, screw it, we're gonna make a game, why not make the game we want? And landed on the idea of a boss rush style gameplay. Cuphead features 19 boss battles and 6 run and gun stages, but back to the art style. Everything in this game is either hand-drawn, hand-painted, or even 3D physical models, and it looks amazing. The work done on this looks like it was all worth it in the end, and I and many others were drawn in with the art style, but there's one important thing that I haven't mentioned yet. So, 19 boss battles and 6 run and gun stages. That doesn't sound like it's gonna take a long time to complete, right? Well, the reason to come to Cuphead is the art style, and the reason to stay is the difficulty. Cuphead is not easy. In fact, Cuphead is hard, and it knows that it's not easy. It'll taunt you for not being able to defeat some of the bosses, but that slight taunt is what makes you want to try again and really stick it to that boss battle. It feels like a retro game, and I and many others love it. Cuphead's art style and difficulty makes this game stand out, and it's one of the reasons I love this game so much. But that difficulty does come at a cost. While Cuphead was beloved by many, the difficulty does cause some problems. Some people believe difficulty shouldn't be a requirement to progress through a game. Now, I hate to post my opinion on the internet, but I'm gonna be honest. I think difficulty should be a requirement to progress. Now, the idea behind this is Cuphead has some great visuals, right? Well, if you can't beat the bosses to continue, you may never see some of those amazing visuals. The thoughts here are, the game should have an easy mode. Well, it does have an easy mode, but you can't progress with the easy mode. So what do I think? Well, I'm glad you asked, whether you did or not. I think, especially in games like this, difficulty should be important. Why? Well, hear me out. Cuphead, I know, is not easy. But Cuphead, I know, is also not long. If you complete each of the bosses in under 2 minutes without dying, the game's gonna take, what, 40 to 50 minutes? That's not long for a video game, especially when the game has this much work put into it. The length of Cuphead comes from the repeated trying on each boss battle. Now, in my opinion, one of the most fun parts of Cuphead is learning the bosses. They typically stick to a repeated pattern. So, as I'm saying, the fun part of Cuphead is learning the boss patterns, perfecting the boss patterns, and beating those bosses. One of the most satisfying things is seeing that little knockout scene at the end of each battle, and I think almost every time this happens, I breathe a breath of release. The pure joy of beating that boss is amazing. If the game wasn't difficult, I wouldn't feel as much satisfaction. So, in my opinion, yes, difficulty should be a factor, and it's one of the reasons I love this game. Well, while I love the difficulty in this game, I guess it's a problem when you can't beat the tutorial. Sorry. You know who I'm talking to. But that's just my opinion. Well, that's just the difficulty. Cuphead has made a name for itself through both its difficulty and its art. But just take a look at some of this amazing art. Each frame is hand-drawn, then inked, and then scanned into a computer and digitally colored. Now, think about that. Each frame of the game is hand-drawn. Cuphead runs at 24 frames per second. I know animation is extremely difficult, and hand-drawn animation on its own is even worse. Look at this. I made one for the intro, right? This is 3 frames. Only 3. and it took me such a long time to put together. I can't stress enough how amazing the process is. Okay, I swear that's enough talk about animation for now. I just love the animation. Now, let's get into the real game. With the opening of a book straight out of an old cartoon, you see the story unfold page by page. Literally, Cuphead and Mugman stumble upon the Devil's Casino and come across a streak of luck. Then next up, Cuphead is offered all the riches in the casino. Blinded by the riches, Cuphead bets both his and Mugman's soul and BAM! Snake Eyes. The Cups beg for their souls, but they're given the option. They can keep their souls if they collect all the souls owed to the devil around Inkwell Isle. And on you go to collect all the uncollected souls from the residents of Inkwell Isle. But be careful, they're not willing to just hand them over. It's a rather dark story, but honestly, I think it sets up the game well. It explains why there are so many bosses, and I think it flows very well with the theme of the game. But then after you've collected each soul contract, you go to face the devil. But you're given the option. You can hand over the contracts and join them, or you can fight the devil and burn the contracts. I do like how it gives you the option. It's just kind of funny. But if you pick the good option, not hand over the contract, prepare for one last battle and save you and your friends' souls. Now, before I continue, there's one thing about this story that just doesn't sit right with me. And I call that the Cuphead collateral damage count. What exactly does that mean? Well, take a look at this boss battle. You're here after Wally Warble's soul. This is Wally Warbles. So, who is this? Well, Willy Warbles, of course. But he doesn't owe his soul to the devil. But we take him down anyway. So what? Do we just kill him? Apparently. I'm stating this now. I'm not going to count any of the run and gun levels. But with that, let's start the collateral damage count. Candy corn's kind of overrated anyway. Oh, come on. The man was just trying to do his job. You know what? No, this stupid cupcake deserved that. They didn't keep their arms and legs in the ride at all times, apparently. Again, another one that deserved everything it got. Poor little guy shouldn't have tried to kill the cups. Yet another guy just trying to do his job. Dang, this squid died faster than the popularity of Squid Games. Okay, well, maybe that wasn't a lot of collateral damage. I thought there was going to be more going into that. But if we count all the little guys you kill along the way, that's a lot of people, so we're gonna end the counter with a lot. Anywho, it's not too complex of a story, but man does it work. I love when a game doesn't focus solely on its story, and this does exactly what I like. Simple, yet to the point. But now I'm sure you're wondering, how on earth am I gonna beat all those bosses? Well, that brings us to the gameplay. Cuphead is a run-and-gun, retro-style shooter, kind of like games like Contra. So, how do you take on the bosses? Well, with your snazzy finger guns, of course. Grab the potion given you by Elder Kettle, which grants the boys the power to shoot from their fingertips. And on you go. But don't worry, you can do more than just shoot. Not only are there 6 different types of shots, but there are 6 different charms and 3 different special attacks. Typically, I use the charge shot and the spread shot to inflict the most damage to make up for using the double hit points, which reduces your damage, but gives you 2 extra hit points because you'll never know when that's going to come in handy. And to accompany that, I normally switch out my super move depending on the boss I'm fighting. But each boss is different, so play your weapons, supers, and charms accordingly. Some might just be right for a certain boss, like take Grim Matchstick for instance. I wouldn't recommend using the charge shot on him. Instead, I would recommend having a roundabout handy because 2 of his phases, he attacks you from behind. Most to all of these weapons can be bought at Porkrinds Emporium for coins. Each coin is collected through the run and gun stages, because the run and gun stages are not necessary to complete the game, but they are necessary to buy the weapons. Each run and gun stage has 5 coins, and you use these coins to buy the weapons from Porkrinds. But you can only buy weapons and charms from Porkrinds. How do you get the supers? Well, the supers are locked away in the Mausoleums where you have to use your parry slap to clear out the pink ghosts trying to get to Legendary Chalice. Once done, Legendary Chalice will give you one of the 3 super attacks. With that, your arsenal is complete. Go take on those bosses with everything you got. Now, Cuphead can be played both single player and multiplayer, and while I think the game is a bit easier alone, multiplayer is definitely the way to play. I will always have a ton of fun playing with a friend. The fun the 2 of you will have is unheard of. It's a lot more fun than normal multiplayer because it's hectic, and in my opinion, high-speed, intense, hectic fun is way better with another player. The two of you can sit in front of a screen, both panic, screaming, and just having the time of your lives as you try to not only stay alive but save your friend. It's clear this game is meant to be multiplayer because when playing two-player mode, when you die, your player 2 has the chance to grab your soul before it flies away. But be careful, each time you die, your soul goes faster and faster. This is an amazing mechanic because not only does it keep you more on your toes, but sometimes it gives you an ethical dilemma, like, do I take the hit and save my friend, or do I let him be a lifeless shell watching him play the rest of the round? Overall, it's a great mechanic, and playing two-player can lead to some wacky stuff, but in the end, the moment the two of you defeat that boss, it's all worth it in the end. Even if the two of you settle for a B ranking. At least you beat the boss. Now, Cuphead has 3 types of levels. First, we have run and gun. This is typically a straight stage where you, well, run and gun. And you get your way to the end of the stage at any means necessary. Unless you want to unlock black and white mode, which to do that, you have to complete each run and gun stage without firing a shot. I've done it once, and it's not worth it. Next is a typical boss. I'm sure you know how this works. You shoot the boss until it gives you a contract. Then finally we have the plane boss battles. The plane bosses are, well, how do I put this? Not my favorite. It's another boss battle except you fly around in this little fighter plane. It's not like they're poorly designed or anything. I guess it's just, these aren't my thing. Maybe because I'm bad at them. But if you like these fights, good for you, I guess. Now, there's something I have failed to mention yet. The music. The Cuphead soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks in the gaming industry. Each stage has its own unique music piece written to fit the theme and the tempo. All the tracks are big band jazz music to keep the players on their toes, and each song is great. All of the music is so fitting, and it would be strange to see them take any other approach to this. I love the Cuphead soundtrack because it really helps add to the 1930s cartoon feel and just fits the whole game itself. Back to the topic of art and design, Cuphead takes place in the beautifully watercolored painted world of Inkwell Isle. And as you're aware, Inkwell Isle is full of bosses, but not only bosses, a ton of happy little NPCs. While most of these guys do nothing, some of them give you coins, some will even give you different effects like black and white or two-strip mode, and some will even sing you a song. They're all fun little guys to interact with, even if some of them don't do anything. I can go on and on about the amazing characters, locations, music, and animation for days, but I feel like I've said enough of that. It's just I don't want to undersell how amazing this is. Cuphead became an instant favorite for me because of the dedication thrown in this game. You can definitely tell it was a passion project, and the developers cared for what they were doing, and this game is nothing but pure chaotic, charming fun from start to finish. It's honestly inspiring to look at the developers' history. Like, the developers quit their jobs and remortgaged their homes to make this game a masterpiece. I hope it was all worth it to them in the end because man do I and so many others love this game. I can't get enough of the gameplay and the characters, which is great because in June, we're getting the delicious Last Course DLC, which is one more Isle of bosses and a playable character. The legendary Chalice is now Miss Chalice, and she seems to be the Toadette of this game. By that I mean she's got an extra jump and a new kind of dodge, just like how Toadette has like an easier mode in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I am super excited for the Last Course DLC because the more Cuphead content, the better. Speaking of Cuphead content, we're not done just quite yet. When looking at Cuphead, many people thought to themselves, if any game deserves a cartoon, this is it. Well, in 2020, more specifically June 5th, 2020, the Cuphead show was announced with original plans to release later that year. But due to a certain event, it was obviously delayed. Animation is a lot of work, and it's even harder when you have everything that went on in 2020 going on. But then on February 18th, 2022, the Cuphead show finally released on Netflix, and I was more than excited. It's been about a little over a week since the show came out, and to say I have watched it is an understatement. So I figured I'd put together a quick review of the show so you know what you're looking for. The Cuphead show is a 12-episode series with more episodes on the way. Each episode is roughly 12 minutes long, which for a cartoon is all I can ask for. When going into the Cuphead show, you have to keep in mind animation is hard. So instead of being completely hand-drawn on paper like the original game, this is all done digitally, and I don't mean that to undersell it. Digital art can be just as hard. But anyway, with that, the show has its own style. It looks different from the game, but I love the show's style. I think it fits perfect for the theme of the show, and the animation is very smooth and well done. But with that, there's something important to talk about, and that's the voice actors. I didn't know what to expect from the voice actors, but what we got is really well done in my opinion. Next, there's something important I need to mention. I've watched a ton of reviews about the show, and all the negative ones have the same thing in common. People are upset it's not one continuous story. Now, I kinda understand where they're coming from, but the Cuphead show is set up where each episode's its own thing, with one big overall story kind of set aside. But in one episode, Cuphead and Mugman can be taking care of a baby, to the next trying to get into a club to eat ice cream. So, the stories of each episode can be its own thing, and honestly, I'm very glad they did this instead of one continuous story. This makes it a ton more rewatchable, and I think a lot more enjoyable. I think it's better fit for the theme of the show. And finally, I think the writing is pretty well done too. I had a blast watching this show, and I can already enjoy a nice rewatch. I think as long as you're interested in the show and the concept, you should give it a shot. But remember, it's not a continuous story. I think it's better the way it is, but if you want it to be exactly like the game, you're gonna be disappointed. In my opinion, I thought the show was a 10 out of 10. I had a ton of fun watching it, and I highly recommend it. Just go in with an open mind. Cuphead is and will probably always be one of my favorite video games of all time, and the show, in my opinion, is just as good. Well, all of Cuphead is good except for Grim Matchstick and Wally Warbles. Those two boss battles leave me with like an intense pain inside. I'll never be able to get over that. But I highly recommend Cuphead if you haven't played it. It's one of the best games I've played. Definitely one of the best games of 2017. I love that game to death.